Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtfully Made Fiber Vlogcast. My name is Amy and I am your host, as well as a knitting pattern designer, a spinner, and sometimes a weaver and sewist here in St. Louis, Missouri. Last time I cleared out this glass cabinet that's open behind me and I moved all the yarn to this Calax unit from IKEA on this side of me. And this is because after 2 years of designing, I've run out of space to store all my design samples. Now, I'm very lucky to work full-time as a knitting pattern designer, but that does mean that I produce a lot of work. So today I'm going to be doing a retrospective of my first 2 years in designing and going over everything I've ever designed in the garment category before I store them away in this glass cabinet behind me. Along the way, I'll be talking about some of my design ethos and some of the things that have become important to me that maybe I didn't know about at first, and all the things I've learned along the way. And I hope you'll like this video. And I've had a lot of fun making it, so let's get right into it. One of the most common questions I get about becoming a knitting pattern designer is, how do I learn to grade? And the answer is you don't, at least not at first. There's so many different aspects to designing, and just because you know how to design something for your own body, which I did, doesn't mean you know how to grade it out properly. So here is the very first design sample garment I have ever knit, the effervescent pullover. I actually did have plans to dive into garment design at this point of my career in the late summer of 2021. However, I had no idea about grading or size charts or any of those things. I basically modeled the sweater off one that already fit me very well for the dimensions, and I chose a yoke lace pattern from a Stitch dictionary, and this one's quite popular. You'll see it in a few designs that other designers have made. But what differentiated this sweater was this ruffle here. Originally, this was the oolong socks, which I'll put a picture up here. I knit like half an oolong sock and submitted it as a potential design proposal for Pom Pom magazine. I also mentioned that I'd be happy to design it as a sweater if they prefer to have it as a sweater. They commissioned it as a sweater, and then I had a really short deadline and needed to figure out exactly how to turn this thing from a sock to a sweater reality. So this one was a huge rush of adrenaline. This was pure adrenaline, beginning to end. Really fun to work on, and to this day, it's one of my favorite things I've ever designed. I love the beautiful lace, and I love how well graded that my tech editor, Jess, and I made it to be. This was 99% Jess. She made almost all the decisions on the different dimensions for the different sizes. This was also the first time I had to confront a size chart, and I chose one that many people in our industry use. And this one comes in sizes that cover actual full bust measurements of, I believe, 30 to 60. So because this was the minimum requirement of Pom Pom magazine, I'm very lucky in that my very first design pushed me and forced me to consider good grading, to hire a grading expert, and to have my basic minimum size chart is already considered size inclusive by today's standards. I know that a lot of other designers start out and they're not sure about what sizes they would like to include, and they kind of end up getting in trouble when they have a large backlog that don't include the larger sizes. But because I started designing relatively recently, I had already seen all of those conversations about size inclusiveness and what kind of sizes should be included to be considered size inclusive. And I was very lucky to work with a magazine that had internal standards that had the size inclusivity statement in it. And this turned out beautiful. I fully tested it across all the sizes because I was just so anxious. It being my first design, I wanted to make sure it was good. And not that I didn't trust Jess, I absolutely do, she's great. But with your first design, it's your baby. You always want to make sure that it serves the customers well. So this was fully tested and it fit beautifully on all the testers, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. This is the effervescent pullover, and this is the first thing I ever designed for garments. This is the second design I ever made, but the first one I launched. So through this garment, I learned how to launch a garment pattern and include all the different testers in it. This is the time I had to figure out if I was going to require testers to post and require them to share photos with me and things like that. And at first I did. So this iteration was kind of when I first started to develop my testing process out more fully without the horrendous deadline of magazine writing. I had time to figure this stuff out. This one was also mostly graded by my trusty friend, Jessica Schwab. The sample was one that I knit during late nights before I started to do this full time. So kind of nighttime after my kids went to sleep, I worked on the sweater and it turned out really beautifully. I still love this side band detail. I love that I was able to learn how to do a charted instruction across different sizes, the cable arrangement in different sizes. Because it's knit bottom up, I chose to do the cable arrangements myself in the grading and then left the shaping and neck depth and things to my wonderful tech editor and grader, Jessica. And this one turned out really well. I still see people work on it this autumn as well, so I'm really proud of it. It's the first time I ran a launch for a garment and it went okay. I will say that at first I didn't expect this to be like a venture that made any money, so I was happy that people wanted to buy it at all. Probably 30 people bought it the first week I launched it, and I was really happy about that. So thank you to everybody who has supported me during this launch and since then. It's really fun to look at it and see how far I've come. So this is the transition slip over, and this is the first pattern I ever launched. Let's get it on the shelf. So next is the very first coloring book raglan. This was the earliest concept of the sweater, which went on to become my bestseller and is still one of my bestsellers today. This was originally knit in Sandnes garns, alpaca wool, and the colorways here are 8063, 1002, and 2335. So this one is extremely warm due to the alpaca blend, and I really love wearing this one. This is the version that had a little bit of these edge striping to give it that little sporty vibe. And this also marks the first time that I graded a pattern almost on my own. So because of the guardrails that my wonderful tech editor Jess puts in for me, this worked out pretty well. I'm really happy with the grade that we ended up with, but Jess did have to rein me in a little bit on some truly wild choices that I made early on. So I guess if you're a brand new designer like I was at the time, my best advice would be to get you a tech editor who will call you out if you don't know what you're doing. I'm very lucky that this became such a big hit, but I'm pretty sure that this sample is not why most of you love the coloring book raglan. So let's get this on the shelf and let's show off the one that most of you actually paid attention to. So once the first coloring book raglan was finished, I kept thinking, oh my goodness, I really also want to knit one, maybe a new pattern, a separate pattern with stripes on the body and stripes on the sleeve and a little wide, unshaped, billowy sleeve. That's 3/4 length. However, at the time, I didn't feel like I had the right to charge double basically for almost the same pattern, just with stripes. So I had my, then one of my tech editors draw up some schematics for different views with different sleeve lengths, different sleeve shaping, and different striping schemes so that users can see the different patterns or the different garments that you can get from just one pattern and to make those modifications themselves. This became my most best-selling pattern because of this aspect, I think. I think many of you have spoken and know all about this one. This stripe sample had yarn support by Erin from Coast to Coast Yarn Co., who dyed up these beautiful mushroom-themed colors. This is still one of my favorite hand-dyed colorways of all time. I think about it all the time. This is the coloring book raglan with the shorter crop length and the wide sleeves and the 3/4 sleeves in a natural merino non-superwash. And I'm so glad that so many of you love this as much as I do. I also have a new to done one that's not in this video just because I wear it so often and it's part of my regular wardrobe now. But this one I keep pretty pristine here as one of my samples, and we'll go ahead and get it on the shelf. So next we have the Go Gently cardigan, which, let's be honest, is not your favorite. This is my worst selling pattern of all time, and to this day I have not recouped my time cost on this one. So this one was like a total loss for me monetarily. This was modeled after the effervescent pullover, but regraded to have more ease in the underarm for a oversized fit, as well as a ruffle that has lace in the ruffle for a little bit of textural interest. Now this is made with La Bien Amy's, let's see, Twist Nouveau and Kumo, both in the colorway Hagalia. And it is a full-length cardigan instead of the crop length that the effervescent was. This was my first attempt at iterating on a previous design that I already made. I'm really proud of this one still because of the wonderful round yoke shaping, followed by this raglan shaping that makes a good fit, and the ruffle, the circular yoke ruffle, possible. So this is my first and so far only round yoke raglan combo, and I think this is the first one that I pretty much graded on my own. So I'm still really proud of the Go Gently cardigan, and I hope that more of you will give it a try, because all the different versions I've seen that people have knit up are honestly incredible. So if you need some inspiration, I highly encourage you check that out on either the Instagram tag #GoGentlyCardigan or on the Ravelry page. Let's get this on the shelf. All right, so next we have the coloring book tee. As soon as the coloring book Raglan went into testing in December of 2021, people kept asking me, will there be a fingering weight version? And because you asked, I decided to deliver. Who am I to say no to this beautiful fingering weight, summer weight version of the coloring book Raglan? The coloring book tee features a tapered 3/4 length version, as well as a short sleeve version that I will show in a minute. This one is knit from Purl Soho's linen quill, and it is knit with 2 different colors striped. It has thinner stripes in the coloring book Raglan because I wanted to give it that more like mariner, navy, like that, you know the vibe with the mariner style stripes that I grew up loving as a kid. It's both the coloring book Raglan and the coloring book tee are very much 90s inspired. They're inspired by my favorite sweatshirts growing up in the 90s. So this one is no exception. I absolutely need to knit another one of these now that I'm looking at it, because I actually don't have one for my own wardrobe. And I try to keep this one clean. Although it is Purl Soho linen quill, and nobody ever asks me for linen quill samples because Purl Soho doesn't do wholesale, so it doesn't really end up like in a yarn shop. So maybe I'll steal this one for my own wardrobe. I had to knit the sample twice because I learned the hard way that if you have let me backtrack. I learned something that I should have already known and definitely didn't know but forgot about, which is that if you have thinner fabric using fingering weight yarn, the same amount of armhole ease is not going to work, because compared to the worsted version, because of the drape, it's more drapey. It wants to make folds on itself because it's a thinner fabric, and the ease I originally had in the armhole length was just too much. That oversized sweatshirt vibe was not going to work here. It was just too baggy and sloppy looking, so I reknit the entire thing. I think I got like this far top down before I realized the problem. And once that happened, I went on a deep dive. I was really committed to making sure this fits beautifully, and I didn't want it to have one of those like diagonal lines that that ended very short and pinched you in the armpit, and the increases are not fast enough to accommodate you in the shoulder, particularly in the upper sizes. I was having trouble grading this out with a straight raglan, and in the end I went with a compound raglan, which creates a little bit of an S shape. It has more frequent increases at the top here and at the bottom here to mimic how the body changes here and here. For some of the larger sizes, the body changes the most drastically, actually across all sizes, right? Because we have armholes. to shape here. So, so yeah, my first compound raglan pullover, and I've never looked back. It fits so comfortably and sits so nicely across the shoulder and the armpit. I'm probably never gonna design a straight raglan sweater again. Although by the time this happened, I had already designed one more straight raglan. So I think I do still have one more in here somewhere. I'll show that soon, but that one had design limitations that prevented me from using a compound raglan. But now, ever since this one, I put it in wherever I could. Let's get this on the shelf and I'll show you the other sample. All right, this sample is a little rumpled from its visit to New York. It's been in storage since then and it's a little bit wrinkled, and I'm trying to straighten it out now. All right, so next up we have the silk version of the coloring book tee. This one's shown with offset edge stripes and with a longer body, I think. No, this is a shorter body. I've forgotten about the samples. This one was knit by my sample knitter Hanagram, who is also on here. I'll tag her below. And yeah, there's not much to say. It has that beautiful compound raglan shaping, which I think in the silk particularly works well. It shows up beautifully and really shows off like how nice the fit is. And I need another silk one. I actually purchased yarn for it and then I never got around to it. I'm sure you can all relate to that, but this is the short sleeve version of the coloring book tee. I'm gonna get, since I already talked forever about it, I'm gonna get this on the shelf and we'll move right on to the next sample. So while I was working on the coloring book tee, which was kind of the coloring book tee came about because of popular request, but at the same time, I was starting to work on my very first collection. Previously, I had only designed things that came in a single pattern, but I wanted to design something that was more cohesive with a diverse group of dyers and just something that really spoke to me and was near and dear to my heart. And the Coming Home Anne of Green Gables collection was born. Here is Anne's puffed sleeves, which is a pullover with a lace raglan shaping and a funnel neck with beautiful neck shaping so that the funnel neck stays off like the middle of your neck. It kind of brings it forward a little bit and down a little bit. It has pleated shoulders to create that dramatic puff sleeve and gathered hem on the sleeve, which remains puffy, with a little I-cord finish here. It is cropped, but instructions and I think yardage were given for a non-cropped full-length version if you prefer full-length sweaters. And I am still so proud of this one. My friend Sharon of Reknits dyed up this beautiful scallion green for me, and I wanted the green. Of all the color options that I was given by Sharon, this one spoke to me because of Anne's beautiful gray eyes and the way that some of her favorite dresses were green. I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that in Anne of the Island, when Gilbert proposes to her, she's actually wearing an old green dress that she uses as like her daily like crafting and doing chores around the house type dress. And for Gilbert, that was like sealing the deal. That was like, he saw like a vision of their entire lifetimes together. And that is what inspired Anne's puff sleeves color. So I am enormously proud of this one, particularly of the puff sleeve construction, which was much easier than I like envisioned. Like once I decided there was going to be puff sleeves, once I decided there was pleats, it was actually quite straightforward to do. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I hope to see some more of your versions coming soon because I have seen people purchase it in the past few weeks for the autumn, so I can't wait to see all your finished objects. Let's get it on the shelf. So by the way, this concludes the last pattern that I published in 2022, and now we're about to jump into 2023. So next we have the building blocks drop, which was another staple pattern that I wanted to design with very basic lines, a simple drop shoulder. And across the sizes, I tried to make the shoulder line fall at the same spot, something that I hadn't seen a lot in other indie patterns for drop shoulders. And since then, I've seen more of them come up. But I'm really proud of this one. This was also the first pattern in which I introduced bust starts, so that if you have a little bit more bust tissue in the front, there are some short rows, optional short rows, that you can add to add a little bit of a wedge here to accommodate it. And actually you can see that we have some drag lines here because this dress form actually could use an inch or so of bust darts. However, I don't, so this one does not have bust darts because it was designed for me. So not much to say about it, except that this one was also my first pattern that I designed fully in Newton. And I always try to make sure that when I design in a difficult to find yarn such as Newton, I have at least one second sample. So this kind of began the journey of me designing second samples almost all the time. And that's become quite exhausting for me and my sample knitters. So I'm trying to rein it back a little bit and design in more commonly available yarns, but this was kind of what happened at the time. This was released in January of this year, and I consulted with Jen Peroncini on the bust darts as well as the armhole shaping, and we came up with a block for the drop shoulder style pattern that I'm really proud of and that I've since come back to twice, which I will share about soon. So let's get this one on the shelf and we'll take a look at the short sleeve version. So the building blocks drop came with a bunch of different views, similar to the coloring book Raglan. It also came with coloring pages, just like the coloring Raglan and the coloring book T, so you can plan your own version. And yardages for each view is given and everything. So it also has some optional pockets, which I didn't show on the other sample, but it's easier to see here anyway. And the other sample had a straight hem, but this one has a split hem, which I will attempt to show. There you go. So you can see there's a split hem with like a little high-low option, or you can do like a straight, a split hem with just like a straight, not high-low situation. So this sample was knit again by Hanagram using some Wool Dreamers yarn. I actually love the way that Wool Dreamers blended gray and white merino and over dyed it for this beautiful heathery effect with lots of depth. Such a beautiful sample. Wish I could steal it from work, but I do get requests for this one to go to shows and trunk shows quite often. So let's get it on the shelf and we'll move on to the next one. Next we have the Building Blocks Cardi, which is the v-neck cardigan version of the Building Blocks drop. This one was a little bit unpopular at launch, probably because it was almost the end of winter, but it's since then made a comeback and I've been seeing more and more finished objects come out. This one was knit by my sample knitter, Lydia, using Durham Natura Gilead. My first time using Durham Natura for one of my samples, and this is a brand that I've come to love this year very much. This woolen spun, I think it's merino, yeah, French merino, woolen spun French merino in these beautiful colors. This is knit in the smallest size because I wanted to demonstrate how it looks on maybe size down. And even though I don't quite need bust darts in my size, just because of the way my proportions work out in the smallest size, I found that I did need an inch or so. You can see that my dress form, which is even more busty than I am, has like the slant going on, and she could do with another inch, but this was knit with 1 inch darts. Yeah, I never sewed buttons onto this. I meant to, and then I just never did. And I released it like that and everything. I did have another sample that I'll show in just a moment that did have buttons though. All right, so here's the second long sleeve sample, knit with a split hem of the Building Blocks Cardi. I knit it with a single pocket because I really only use my right pocket. And this one I'm probably gonna steal into my wardrobe soon. It was knit with size 2 body, and then I decreased into size 1 shoulders, but with size 2 sleeves because my arms aren't quite size 1. So I modified this heavily for my own body and wrote up a blog on how to modify it. And so many of you seem to enjoy that content and went on to modify and do great things with your own Building Blocks Cardi. And since this one was so heavily modified for my own body measurements, this is one I'll probably steal soon. And I also have another short sleeve sample of this guy that looks similar to the Building Blocks drop in the short sleeve. Also knit in Newton, which is what this is, which is an unspun yarn that I love to use. However, I already stole that into my closet It's upstairs in my real wardrobe, not in my pretend work wardrobe. So I am not gonna go and get that now because this video is taking me hours to film and I need to get through it. I can't believe how many patterns I've designed just in 2 years. Oh my goodness. Anyway, this is the building blocks cardi. I'm gonna get it on the shelf and get the next pattern out for you. So around the same time that I designed the oolong socks for Pom Pom magazine, which then became the effervescent pullover instead, I also sketched out a few short sleeve options or sleeveless options of the same lace pattern that I was planning to use for the oolong socks. This became the oolong tank, which was my best selling pattern this year. This is a V-neck bottom up tank top with gorgeous, gorgeous arm shaping, beautiful optional bust starts, and this beautiful lace panel that really adds a little magical something to this pattern. It has a deep V-neck for that like very sassy look, and I wear it over bralettes and over t-shirts depending on the occasion and how appropriate I need to be in the world. Like when I pick up my kid, I try to throw on a shirt under. And this one was knit from alpaca silk from Big Little Yarn Co. And this has been hugely popular. I've seen lots of beautiful finished objects by you, and I'm so glad that you like it as much as I do. So this is the pattern where I started to experiment with the fit a little bit more. On the building blocks cardi and the building blocks drop, while working on the bust starts, I kept wondering, like, why don't we have a little more width on the front of patterns for people with breasts compared to the back? It doesn't make sense because the cross back measurement and the cross front measurement are drastically different. So we would not need as much help with bust starts if we had a little bit more width in the front to accommodate that extra tissue. So through a combination of a little tiny extra width, not like the full measurement difference, but in this pattern for especially the larger sizes, according to my size chart, the larger sizes have the biggest difference between the upper chest and the full chest measurements. So for the first time, I made the front slightly wider than the back to accommodate all that extra breast tissue. And I also still had the bust stars for those who need even more. And it turned out really wonderfully. This has really changed the way I design garments and design for breasts. And I'm really, really proud of how this turned out. It looks beautiful on all the testers and all the customers who have made it since. So thank you all for your love for the oolong tank. I'm gonna get it on the shelf and we'll move on to the next pattern. In the summer of this year, I released my second tee pattern in fingering weight yarn, and I returned to one of my favorite yarns now, linen quill, for this project. Might look familiar. As I said earlier, as soon as the coloring book Raglan came out, people started asking for a fingering weight version of the coloring book Raglan, and then as soon as the coloring book tee came out, people asked for a V-neck version. And I don't blame them. Crew is not for everybody. The coloring book tee comes all the way up to here in a standard crew depth. It does have neck shaping, but still I know it's not for everybody. So I went ahead and went big. I was like, go big or go home. We're gonna have like a really sassy V, well, slightly sassy V, hence the name. I finessed the raglan shaping for the compound raglan even further. We have a clean and beautiful I-cord finish similar to the oolong tank. And again, similar to the oolong tank, it is a little bit wider in the front than in the back. When I designed the coloring book tee, I realized that when you have so little ease recommended for the body, that depending on the body, you might want some extra room in the hips because not all of us are stick straight. And so with this one, I added a slight A-line shaping to accommodate the full hip so that it flows nicely along and still has that boxy look, but it's not gonna be tight around the hip. This is also present in the oolong tank, but that marks the beginning of me adding hip shaping to many of my patterns. And I do find that as I age, my weight distribution has changed, and I'm putting on a little more weight here in the front of the hips and also on my belly, so that extra room is appreciated. This pattern also comes in a long sleeve mode and a 3/4 length sleeve, and I am planning on adding a mod sheet to make it full length sleeves, so please look out for that. I'm not close to done with it. I'll knit a whole new sample for it, so please don't rush me on that. It will not be coming soon, but it will be coming. Yeah, we'll see how much my schedule allows me to work on that sample, but I really want to wear that sample. So this marks the first time I didn't knit a sample at all for a launch. This sample was knit by my trusty friend and sample knitter Hannah Graham out of Pearl Soho Linen Quill in my favorite colorway now from them, Fresh Pickles. This green is so vivid, so fun. The heather quality gives it such depth and such an interesting quality. I love the way the linen doesn't take up the yarn, the dye quite the same. So it's like a little heathery and variegated, and I just love this sample so much, y'all. I love the Slightly Sassy V so much that I ended up knitting one for my personal wardrobe from La Bien Aimee Silk, and I will be knitting another one for my personal wardrobe, again from Linen Quill with full length sleeves. This sample is shown here with short sleeve and the longer body version. Let's get it on the shelf and I will show you the other sample of the Slightly Sassy V. So I fully expected the short sleeve Slightly Sassy V to be my favorite, but when Hannah sent over both of these samples, I realized I fell in love with this beautiful lavender one. This one is knit in Derurum Natura's Albertine in their purple color Orsing, and it is knit to my size and with a cropped length as well as the tapered 3/4 length sleeves. This one is like 10% silk, 90% merino. It's so smooth and soft to the touch. Beautiful stitch depth definition, wonderful structure along the raglan line and the I-cord, just perfect. I love everything about this pattern. I want to knit like 20 of them. It's a great basic and I'm so glad y'all pushed me to do it. So for everybody who ever asked for a V-neck version of the coloring book tee, thank you. So next we have the Friendship Pullover, which was designed in collaboration with La Mercerie and La Bien Aimee for Flock Fiber Festival. Now I know that not everybody is into the idea of a fiber festival specific knit, but I wanted to have one because to me one of the best parts of being a knitting designer and being a knitter has always been the community. So this is my ode to the community of knitting with interlocking cables that go apart and meet and go apart and meet and go apart and meet over and over again. This is a high hip bottom up compound raglan pullover with a center cable panel. And as with the previous two patterns, it is slightly wider in the front than in the back. It has full length taper sleeves and a little funnel neck, but you can see that there's a lot of neck shaping here so that you could knit this as a crew neck instead if you want to. So this was knit to like 4 inches neckband and then folded over and sewed down for this kind of like stand-up collar vibe. To get this effect, you will need a non-superwash yarn that will stand up nicely. This is La Bien Aimee's Quarry Worsted, and I had such a good time bringing this to Flock Fiber Festival this year and meeting so many of you. I know of a few friend groups who have decided to knit this together, and I even saw photos of 2 friendship pullovers at Rhinebeck this past weekend. So thank you all for loving this sweater as much as I do. Probably the favorite thing I've designed this year, actually. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh. I actually have another one on the needles. This is truly the year that I bought into my own hype, which is embarrassing. But every sweater I design, I'm like, I want that for my wardrobe. I only have it in my work sweater closet, and I can't wear it out and about to pick up some stuff. I want one. So I've cast another one on in Newtoden, which is like a sample. It's like a reckless cast on I absolutely don't have time for, and yet here I am. Let's get this one on the shelf. All right, finally we reached my most recent and final release of this year, the Matthew pullover. Eagle-eyed viewers will know that this used to be the Seasons Change pullover that was at Making Magazine, but because my sizing standards has changed so much, I decided to completely regrade it and re-release it as a new pattern. The main changes are definitely that armhole shaping in the higher sizes to make sure that the sleeve seam falls on the similar place on everybody. The old pattern that we graded just wasn't good enough, and as my size inclusiveness and shape inclusiveness standards change, I did not feel good about re-releasing this pattern once the rights returned it to me, unless I fix it up. So we did. We fully tested it. Looks great, incredible on all the testers. Going through the tester photos on this one was like, oh my God, every single one of these, I want every single one of these. And my assistant and business partner, Symphony, was like, I wasn't gonna knit this one, but looking at these testers, I think I need to knit this one. Like, this just turned out so beautiful and photogenic on all the different people. Now, we are using like a terrible artificial light here, so you can't really see the texture super duper well. But look at that texture. I'm so happy with this one. Can you believe that this is like the second thing I ever designed? Like between the Effervescent and the coloring book Raglan. I feel that early on, I definitely had like something to prove. Like I wanted to prove that I was a good fashion designer. So all of this classic Gansey style yoke texture came from that desire to like really make beautiful things. Now I've become known as more of like a basics designer, but this is truly where my heart is. Like I want to design stuff like this all day, every day. I've already stolen the original Seasons Change sample into my closet and wear it all the time. One of the other big changes in fit on this one is that I made the neckline a little wider and a little deeper, just because I know that people don't love that super high crew that I prefer. So I wanted to give y'all an option in my pattern library that has a little bit scoopier of a crew neck. It's still, I would say, crew. It's not quite like scoop, you know, but it's definitely lower than any of my other patterns that are not v-necks. So that is the Matthew Pullover knit in Newton in full length. And as always, I couldn't leave it alone. I'm gonna get this on the shelf and show you a short sleeve version. So here we have the short sleeve kind of slip over version of the Matthew Pullover. It has the same beautiful texture, the same optional bust darts, the same difference in the front and back width. And I actually didn't super love this on me. Like something about it made me unhappy with my body. And there's no such thing as a bad body, but something about this felt wrong on my body. But the photos spoke to so many of you, and so many of my testers actually knit up such beautiful renditions of it that I'm slowly coming around to this one. The Matthew Pullover, oh my God, there's hair on it. I'm shedding everywhere. The Matthew Pullover is knit bottom up. This sample was knit expertly by my friend, longtime friend from before I was a knitting designer. I met Gillian on Instagram and we've been chatting ever since. This is her first project for me since joining my sample knitting team. So thank you, Gillian, for creating this beautiful second sample of the Matthew Pullover. This one is another design using the Ragam Natura's yarn, and this is the chunky bulky weight version, Cyrano. For this pattern, I highly recommend using either an unspun yarn or a woolen spun yarn because it's lofty and it's more lightweight. The grist, which means like pounds per yard, is lower than a worsted weight spun yarn, and it will just give you a more lightweight and warm garment without dragging and getting like weird and unshaped. Definitely don't recommend bulky garments in worsted weight yarn. This is definitely my preference. So thank you, Gillian, for knitting this one up. This is the Matthew Pullover. I'm gonna get this on the shelf, and so thank you, Gillian, for knitting up this beautiful sample. I hope that you have enjoyed this video in which I go over every pattern I have ever designed and published myself since the start of my design life. It's been 2 years and it's been a wild ride, and I've so enjoyed designing every single one of these, and I feel so lucky that I get to share these patterns with you. Do you have a favorite among all the ones that I've already published so far? I'd love to know your thoughts. What have you knit from here? What is on your queue? Which one's your favorite? I'd love to know more, and as always, Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you like to see more of my design journey. Thanks for watching.